Lizzy, I am so excited to be speaking with you today. You're somebody who we go a ways back, our connection, because I went to elementary school with your husband, Ira, which we could spend the entire podcast talking about, which we won't.
People would like that.
People would love it. But I want to begin with you, and I'm really fascinated by your story. You grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and this entire series, what we're really trying to talk about is outreach. People who have moved beyond their community of origin and are articulating a message of Judaism that goes way beyond, which is something that you do every single day. But to understand where you are now, I want to really better understand the religious Jewish world you grew up with. What was it like growing up religiously in Fort Worth, Texas?
You know, I didn't realize it until recently, but I think that so much of why I am the way I am and why I'm so passionate about doing this work comes from the fact that I grew up as a Jew in Fort Worth, Texas. I know this sounds very counterintuitive, but because I was one of only 2 Jews in my class.
In the entire class?
In my entire class in school. Okay. And because I had to work extra hard to have that Jewish connection. You know, there were 10 kids in my bar bat mitzvah Hebrew school class.
Sure.
From the entire city of Fort Worth. Okay. And I was able to get involved with BBYO, which was my only time that I was around other Jews until I left Fort Worth and went to college. So I had to really work for it. And my parents, thank God, were very, very committed to Jewish values. We did not have a particularly religious family. We, for example, we would light the Shabbat candles on Friday night, and then I would go cheer at the football game.
Gotcha.
So we had 2 Friday night
That's
lights.
a real like football Friday night lights. Exactly.
2 different.
You had 2.
Yep. But I thought that was normal. You know, I never felt disconnected from my Jewish identity because this was all I ever knew. And
your parents must have done a superb job that when you were growing up, it was very clear to you that there was something about your identity that was different from the other kids in the class.
I really owe such a debt of gratitude to both my parents and all 4 of my grandparents, really, because I was raised on the stories of my ancestors, and it was so important to them that I knew where I came from. And yeah, I'm from Fort Worth, Texas, but if you go back a couple generations, I'm from the shtetl. And so I always joke that I have a Yiddish neshama. And like I grew up hearing Yiddish spoken with a Southern accent. And I thought that was normal too, because that's all I ever knew.
Your grandparents were American born?
All 4 of my grandparents were born in America, but their parents were born in Europe.
I'm the same like that. So you grow up, you're in Fort Worth, Texas. You started getting into like fashion, right? I remember the first time I met you or heard of you, you were known as the accessories expert.
Yeah.
That's like what you were doing.
For sure.
At what point do you feel like you took greater control of your Jewish identity?
So when it came time to choose a college, my mom was adamant that I get out of Texas. She wanted me to kind of spread my wings. I wanted to get out of Texas and just have a different experience. And it was one of the best gifts that I could have given myself. But one of the most important things was that I choose a college where there was a significant Jewish population. I visited NYU, and I just fell in love with New York City. I had always loved New York City. I grew up coming here with my grandparents, but just the experience of Washington Square Park and downtown Manhattan. And I was really actively pursuing a singing career at the time. I was singing on this country music show every weekend in Fort Worth, Texas. And I was hoping to pursue that in college. So New York seemed like a very...
Like if I would have asked you as a teenager, where do you hope to be in your 20s and 30s? You would have said a singer. Professional singer. Like
professional singer.
Who I would have heard of on the radio or something.
Yes.
Okay.
That was it. Tunnel vision, focused, wanted that. And so NYU, I loved because I felt like it allowed me to kind of skip over that traditional college experience of, you know, I come from a world... and I know this is maybe harder for some people who grow up in an Orthodox world to understand, but in the world that I came from, you go to a big campus, you join a sorority, And I just didn't really want that. I didn't want
that would have been the normal trajectory for you.
Yes, that would have been the traditional path. And I chose to go to NYU because I kind of wanted to skip over that and just full force ahead with the singing career. And I never thought about marriage or kids or family. That was not in my dreams. I know a lot of girls fantasize about their weddings. That wasn't me.
Not you either. You were laser focused on what it would take to become a world-renowned singer, a rock star, proper.
Yep, that's what I wanted.
Like, what kind of singer? Like, who was your vision board of singers?
I don't know. I mean, I grew up singing traditional country music. I got super into jazz when I was in college, but I also sang with my guitar teacher's rock band all over downtown Manhattan, different rock clubs.
So this isn't like Britney Spears.
No, not pop.
Like proper singing.
Proper singing, but with some grit, real grit. And so what happened was I was having success with my singing. I was performing everywhere. And I was also living this crazy party girl New York City lifestyle. I had the coolest friends. I was wearing the coolest clothes, and
you were in the scene.
I was in the scene, and I loved it. But there was a huge part of me at a certain point that just started to feel this emptiness, and it was like this void just kept growing and growing. And
why? You had everything.
Because
you're young, you're talented. Can you like articulate what like? How do you even notice a feeling of emptiness?
I think if I'm going to be honest, it kind of is something that had always been there, this void that had kept me awake at night as a child, these like deep existential questions of why am I here? What is my purpose?
Even as a kid, you remember that?
Seeking meaning and always having what I call this dueling duality. Like I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted this cool life. But on the other hand, I was doing all of this work for intercultural programming and traveling all over the country speaking about diversity, education, and awareness since I was 15 years old. Like really craving both of these things.
Gotcha.
That didn't necessarily go together. And
you're just delaying having to choose one path.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to have to choose. But I think what happened was I got so deeply invested in this party girl scene that I woke up one day and I just didn't even know who I was or where I was going. Instead, it was kind of like all of the dreams that I had always had, I felt like weren't there anymore. And I was just thinking about, well, where are we going out tonight? And what am I going to wear? And
you were living like a more embodied life, just very basic, just almost
materialistic and like superficial.
Gotcha.
And I just didn't like that girl that I had become. And I felt a sadness that wouldn't go away. It's almost like when I was a kid and I would go to summer camp, I used to get incredibly homesick, like
me
debilitatingly.
I couldn't go to sleepaway camp.
My parents forced me to go, and I would cry every day and make all my cabin mates miserable.
I have a theory about kids who get easily homesick of having like a very intense sense of self.
Yes.
So you experience loneliness, you experience isolation.
Yes.
It's so much scarier.
Yes.
And familiarity and the comfort of your own home is providing something much more than just like a roof over your head.
No.
It's where you find yourself.
Yes.
It's like, now I know where I am. I could not sleep away from home, and
I never slept out, ever.
I could.
Never.
There's bar mitzvah season. We were like this is why so much of how I learned, I wouldn't say idolized, but mystified by Ira and his grade, your husband, is they were a grade when they would go to weekend bar mitzvahs, they would come back with stories of like the police were involved.
Yes,
I mean, it was
they
crazy.
Were insane.
And I was like,
insane.
I don't even have the confidence to go to the weekend bar mitzvahs. I went to one, Hillel Novak, my entire time. I was too frightened. So you were afraid of sleeping over also.
Yeah, I liked to be in, I guess, I think, so what the point I was getting at was, that feeling of loneliness and isolation is something that I started to feel a lot in this particular time. It was like, where am I? It wasn't, I want to go home, but it was like, who am I? Where am I? I've lost myself. And so I, at the time, didn't really know where to turn besides to learn more about Judaism. I felt like it just made sense. I didn't know that I was missing something spiritually because I had never had it, but I felt like I was searching for more. And so I got involved with this Jewish outreach organization at NYU called Maor. And it was my senior year. So, I had gone through my first 3 years finding my way, and I figured out about myself.
Can I just ask bluntly?
Yeah.
Like, during this period, are you Shabbos observant?
No.
Zero. Okay.
I have an uncle who's a rabbi at Ner Yisrael in Baltimore, and he used to call me.
Who?
Oberstein. Leonard Oberstein. You know him?
I went to Ner Yisrael, of course.
It's my uncle.
Oh, my goodness. That's so funny. Okay. I did 4 years in Ner Yisrael.
So he used to call me every...
We have the strangest connections.
It's very weird. The Jewish world.
The Jewish world.
So he used to call me every Thursday, and he'd be like, Lizzy, this is your family in Baltimore. We're waiting for you to come for Shabbos. It's a short train right away. And I would just ignore all his calls. I'm like, you're insane. I have no interest in coming. Spending the weekend in Baltimore. Thank you. So he was the only person that I knew to reach out to. So I called him. I said, Uncle Leonard, look, I am looking to learn more about my Jewish identity. What do I do? Tell me what to do. And he was like, what? He was shocked. He said I was the least likely person in our entire family that he ever thought he would get that call from.
If you freeze frame and I ask Lizzy at this point, like, can you read Hebrew?
Yeah, I could read Hebrew. I had all the surface level.
The basics.
I had all the surface level Jewish education that was like fake it till you make it.
Sure.
If you had looked at me from the outside, you would have thought Jewish pride, Jewish whatever, but it was just an empty vessel because I didn't have the education or the knowledge or the understanding or the feeling really to back it all up.
Okay. So then after calling Uncle Lenny, you went to seminary?
No. I would not have taken that leap. I was in school. I started going to this Tuesday evening fellowship. I was with a bunch of people that I knew peripherally from NYU, and I got into it. It was kind of everything that I was searching for. It was kind of a refuge from this chaotic world that I was in. It's because it's not like I was like, oh, I'm going to turn off the party girl lifestyle. It was just that it wasn't enough for me and I needed something else.
Did you have a moment where you began to even speak about yourself in terms of like becoming Orthodox? I'm non-Orthodox now. Like, at what point did you like enter into like the big Kiruv world where like there's a destination they want you to reach to be like a fully integrated.
And they're very clear about the agenda that they have for you, and it really upset me because I was like, so you just think of me as this commodity and you want to.
When did you discover that?
Pretty early on.
Oh,
they're
really?
not very good at like.
Okay.
I'm also very perceptive, so
Gotcha.
I knew that they had an agenda. Like they weren't just being nice to me. Like they have a clear vision for what they want.
And if I would have asked freeze frame Lizzy at that point, like, do you want to become Orthodox? Would you have said, I already am Orthodox?
No. I would have said, I don't know.
Okay.
Because that was the truth.
Gotcha.
I didn't know. And there was a lot that scared me about it. And I am a very extreme person. So when I'm in, I'm all in. When I'm out, I'm all out. And so to take that leap for me, I knew would be, it would change my whole life and everything about it. And it did. Even though I maybe didn't fit the profile of what the Kiruv rabbis were trying to achieve with me, I still transformed my entire life through that experience.
In what way do you feel that you, like, even at the time, were not the product that your mentors, who were good people, you like, but like that you had, I'm not the product that I haven't done the thing that they would have wanted me to do.
I guess in my head, the Orthodox world was something where, women have a role where they're in control of the home and setting the tone of the home. And I never, ever, and I still cringe at the idea that I would ever be a homemaker.
Homemaker, yes.
Like that to me is everything that I grew up with that I rejected and wanted to run away from. And so I could not get behind that concept.
I have a vivid memory of, it was like a school form where you have to write your parents' profession.
Yeah.
And I wrote down homemaker for my mother. And I remember her, aside from telling me she was crushed.
Yeah.
It like hurt her to see that. Some people love it. Like,
my mom, she's the ultimate nurturer.
Yeah.
She lives to take care of all of us. But that was just never me.
It's not what you wanted.
I don't cook. I don't clean. I mean, I can cook and clean. That is not, it doesn't fulfill me. Like, and there's no shame at all. And I think my mom is my hero. I wish that would be enough for me because she has given us all the wings to fly. And without her, I don't know where I would be. But I just knew that I couldn't take on that role.
Gotcha.
And so I think that's sort of how I perceived becoming Orthodox. And when I found out about Kolisha, which is this law that, Jewish Orthodox men are not supposed to hear a woman sing, I was like, well, that's it. I'm out.
That's the deal. That's like...
I was like, I'm out. And they were like, but there are these beautiful women's concerts. I'm like, no, you really don't get it.
It's like the Nishay, like...
And by the way, these girls have become complete rock stars. They're like the Taylor Swifts.
Well, now that social media exists, they have like
they're
real
like
audience.
Bracha Jaffe. I mean, there are so many, and they're amazing. But that's just not
when you have your aspirations in playing in Carnegie.
This was not how I saw myself at all. And like I was having a bit of an identity crisis, which is normal when one is going through this spiritual brainwashing.
Yeah,
which I don't think is a bad thing.
No.
So, but I didn't know. I was very slow to make any sort of commitment. I remember the first Shabbos I kept, I went to a Shabbaton in Passaic with Maor.
Oh, they threw you into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah, they did. And I was like...
Passaic Shabbos. I would have started
very nice.
I would have started with Englewood.
Literally. I was like... I didn't know modern Orthodox.
Gotcha.
Like,
because Maor has a little bit more of a yeshiva feel.
It is... totally
yeshivish.
Black hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I also didn't know what that meant, but yeah. And by the way, I'm still extremely close with my rabbis from Maor, Rabbi E. Aaron Eisman. He's from Baltimore also. He and I speak every week. We're super connected. Rabbi Shmala. I mean, these people are in my life still today.
Wow.
So,
but that first Shabbos in Passaic, thumbs up, thumbs it. Like, did it go well?
I felt like it was like an anthropological experiment.
Gotcha.
Like throw me into this
You were
world
like on
and
a
see how I
safari
do.
in Passaic.
Yeah, I was like, okay. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to live in Passaic. Like there was no world where that would ever happen. But and there was like an intensity that I saw that I felt a bit uncomfortable by. And I felt like, okay, like this is cool, but I'm not sure this is for me.
At what point in your upbringing, was it an epiphany or like slowly easing in? Did you look at yourself and say, my religious identity is I'm Orthodox, I'm Shabbos observant? Like, when did you get comfortable with a real, like a change in the title? Everybody labels don't matter, but like at some point when you're living it long enough.
I remember one particular moment. I was at my graduation from NYU lunch with my brother and my parents and some friends, and we went to this nice restaurant in Union Square, and I ordered a burger, and then I said, no, I'm gonna have sushi. And that was the first time that I said,
you make a real choice.
And I hate sushi. I still don't eat sushi. But I was like, that's like kosher.
Gotcha.
And at that point I was like, okay, this is it. I'm graduating from college. I'm making this commitment to myself. I'm now going to keep kosher. And I really wanted the burger.
And you knew what that was because you didn't grow up.
I didn't grow up keeping kosher.
Correct.
So I knew what that was, and I knew, I was scared to even make that decision because I knew that it meant that, like, if I felt like I was making this commitment to myself, that I wanted to, because look, like, I learned very early on when it comes to keeping mitzvot, I'm not doing it for God. God doesn't need anything. I'm doing it for myself. So do I want to give myself this gift of a connection to my Jewish identity, a deeper connection, and in turn a deeper connection to God? Because every single time that I make the decision to eat kosher or make a bracha on food, which my kids think it's so funny. They're like, "Mommy, you made a bracha on your what? You make brachas?" You know, because they do the brachas in school, and they think it's funny that I do it. But that's for me to feel this connection, and it's a reminder that I am different, I'm Jewish, and that I have God above me. It's a humble act, and it's also a reminder that I'm not in control of the world. And so it was one particular day, and I was like, that's it.
I want to fast forward because the contrast to me, and to very differing degrees with very different populations, both of us have a public persona and a home and a family and a family persona. We're fast forwarding to where you are now.
Yeah.
You got started in this world in the Jewish world in Fort Worth. You originally are going to be a singer. You pivoted to fashion. Then at some point, you started posting more and more about Israel and Jewish identity to the point where that's almost the core.
That's it.
That's like at the core of it. Was that transformation solely a awakening post October 7th, or were you already headed in that direction pre October 7th?
It's funny because I get almost every speech I've given, or any opportunity that's kind of happened since October 7th, people will say that to me. Oh, since October 7th, Lizzy Savetsky has taken this on. And I'm not resentful about that. But the fact is that I had made the full pivot and the full commitment to devote my entire platform to fighting for the Jewish people, Jewish education, and defending the truth for Israel back in 2021. But really, I had started that shift as early as 2017. I put Zionist with an Israel flag in my Instagram bio, and was always extremely outspoken, even if it wasn't the core of my content. So, but yeah, there was a particular moment in 2021 when Israel had been attacked from a barrage of rockets from Hamas, and it killed a bunch of civilians. And I saw how social media was being used as a propaganda machine to demonize Israel.
And this is pre-October 7th.
This is 2021.
I wasn't paying that much attention then.
This is the spring of 2021.
And I remember when I would hear people who were like, we have to fight anti-Semitism. It almost sounded in 2021 to my ears like antiquated, I
was thinking about this morning, actually. And I had always told myself this story that it was the spring of 2021 when this attack happened and whatever. But actually in January of 2021, we had the march across the Brooklyn Bridge against anti-Semitism after the rabbi, I believe it was in New Jersey, got stabbed.
Yes. Hanukkah time.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, so we had that march across the Brooklyn Bridge.
And you participated.
I flew in from Dallas. We were living in Dallas at the time. And I said to Ira, we have to be there. We have to go. We can't, this is such a critical moment. I think even at that point, I was already seeing that the thing that I cared more about than anything else was standing up for the Jewish people. And I didn't even know what to do with that because I had never seen anyone transform their platform from fashion and accessories to...
It's a hard pivot. It's a sharp
intense
pivot.
Yeah.
It's not like you were doing earlier stuff on just like world politics. Let's zoom in on Israel. That's like a Ben Shapiro pivot.
Yes.
He could, you could manage it.
No, this was
this is from like handbags straight to the Middle Eastern politics.
Literally. And I remember having like this feeling inside of my body at that march, like I have to change some things. I remember feeling like I think I have a big job to do, but I don't know how to do it.
See, what I find so remarkable is again, before I know you, because that's fairly recent, I know Ira since second grade. And I'm not making sense, we were best friends, but like we literally grew up together. We were on the same bus. I knew him. And this type of role that you play, which is a very public, very Jewish force, very deeply Zionistic, but it's more than just, it's deeply Jewish. And you project that outwards. Was there a point, were you and Ira on the same page early in the marriage? Like, didn't you want, or wasn't the vision, like, you're married to a plastic surgeon, you're this fashion icon, like, wasn't there a part of you, or wasn't there at least a part of him, which is like, can't we be just like the regular plastics and enjoy our lives? Like, why go on this? Why add this dimension? Is that post October 7th that like we're going all in on this and it's going to affect our professional lives?
Yeah.
When did that start where you and Ira, because it's more than just changing content. It's changing your very identity.
Changing our whole lives.
How people see you, what people associate you with. Did you need to have a private conversation? Like, again, the Ira I know is not the Ira who's like, I want to dedicate the rest of my life in sharing Jewish content and Jewish identity.
Right.
And, from a surface level, if he would have met you and he married a person in fashion, I would have said, have a good life. Go to shul on Shabbos and the high holidays. Right. Enjoy yourselves.
Right.
Did you have to have like a private conversation about this?
Ira is my silent partner for the most part in all the work that I do. And I think it surprises a lot of people, especially people that know him from growing up, because he does have a more private type of personality.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I went on Instagram impulsively and started talking about my pregnancy losses, and he was in the OR and he came out and he's like, Lizzy, like, what did you do? Like, I haven't even told my parents. Like, why do you have to talk about this to the world? Whatever. But when it came to the Jewish people and standing up for Israel, Ira would be the one driving the ship. And this is what people are surprised about and also don't really know, is that he came to me and was like, you have an obligation. God gave you a platform and there aren't people stepping up. You have to do this. And he even said to me, my grandma came out of Auschwitz at 78 pounds and we are here because of her miraculous survival. And when we're seeing the tide shift and the world turn against us, we have a big job to do, not only for ourselves, but for our ancestors, because they were somehow miraculously able to hang on to their Jewish identity despite all of the persecution that they had to endure, and also for our children. So how can I not do everything that I possibly can for the Jewish people?
Did that surprise you? Meaning, you signed up, you meet a guy, Ira's always good-looking guy from back in the day. Like, I remember I was trying to explain.
He used to have long hair.
To Ronit. He had like the perfect Jonathan Taylor Thomas haircut. Do you remember, like, perfect part in the middle, like the step? Like, it was like impeccable.
Oh my God, I love JTT.
The JTT. He was the coolest, and he goes through a really bumpy high school experience. Yeah, really bumpy. I knew
for our viewers out there, my husband went to 3 high schools.
Yeah,
and not because he chose to.
Yeah, exactly. We start off in the same. Yeah. He didn't make it. Yeah. Went to 2 others. We knew a lot of the same crap, and like finally gets into med school. Plastic. Like, what's driving you to that? He's encouraging you to get more involved. Like, why not? Like, enjoy the fruits of your professional labor and have just like a good, chilled, fun life.
Right. How can we do that? Literally, our people are suffering right now, and we are fighting for our survival. And I know that I can't go and fight in the war. I'm not a soldier. But how can I not step up and do my part and do everything that I can? And I think Ira very much had his head on straight with that from the very, very beginning. He was the one actually who encouraged me to quit my job in fashion and take my Instagram full time. I didn't know when I opened up my Instagram account back in 2011 that I would be able to have a career from social media. I mean, that would have sounded preposterous to me at the time. But Ira had the foresight to know that this could really be something. And he wanted me to take that leap and take that risk.
And he's encouraging you.
Yeah, he's like, if you don't dive in head first, you're never going to know. Just do it. And I remember having that call with my parents, like, I'm going to quit my job. And they were like, why would you do that? Like, you have a stable income. Ira's in residency. This is crazy. And I said, because if I don't do it now, I'll never know. And the moment could pass. And Ira always had, I'm telling you, it's this kind of optimism that borders on delusion that Ira has, that is a gift to somebody like me. Because my first answer is always no.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I can't do that. Are you insane? How could I say no? Me? No, I can't. And he's always like, Lizzy, yes, you can and you will. And he's the one that really pushes
You see
me.
it with his life. I mean, thinking back and that, I can picture his 8th grade class picture and say, identify the person who's going to get through a surgical residency. I mean, I don't know if he'd be the first
Ira.
face I would cross out, but he'd be of the first 5 or 10.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, like
not going to be him.
A few others.
Yeah, but he's extremely driven. And I think it's this, there was never a moment where we were like, we need to have a conversation about this. Which direction is I remember actually in 2021 when I got dropped by my management company after I started going full force for Israel.
Sure.
And they said, look, Lizzy, it wasn't even an anti-Semitic conversation. It was at all. It was like, look, Lizzy, you're on an amazing path, but we can't help you. You are no longer marketable to our clients.
You're doing something else.
Yeah. They're like, we support you and we're cheering you on, but it's time for us to like cut you loose. And I was like, thank you. And I had to go to him and be like, look, like, I know we're dependent on my income. I'm going to have to figure out what to do from here. And he very much had my back. He was like, this is from Hashem. You're meant to be taking this turn, completely unexpected turn, and it will, we'll figure it out. And it took time, but ultimately I was able to parlay it into a full-blown international speaking career. And, it's been...
And here's my question with that. And this is almost, I'm seeking because you and I, who do very different things on very different scales to very different audiences, but both of us in very different ways really found a place or a voice that this chair that we are sitting in each respectively did not exist.
No,
it did not exist when we exited high school. It didn't really exist
We're
when we
blazing the
exited
trail.
College. But here's my question to you, especially given an upbringing in Fort Worth and a pivot from fashion into not just Israel, but Yiddishkeit and Judaism. How do you deal with and how do you not have crippling imposter syndrome? I want to share with you a real conversation I remember I had. There was one of these like social media controversies. They come up like every 6 months. You have like a hard time remembering what they were about.
Yeah.
And somebody was upset at the amount of attention I get or something on Twitter, whatever, and I remember they said, it's not right. People, Lizzy Savetsky, they invoked your name, should be getting just as much sway or attention or influence as you. And I was like, I don't even remember what the context was, but I remember what somebody else came in and said, and I was hurt on your behalf. Somebody said, well, Lizzy is hard to take seriously because 5 minutes ago she was posting fashion pictures and running a fashion show. Mm-hmm. And when I heard that, I'm like, right away, I'm thinking of all the people who are saying that about me. I'm not posting fashion pictures, but anybody who's in this spot knows all the reasons why people should not take you seriously.
For sure.
And like, it can chirp in your brain.
For sure.
On different sides. So my first question is, when you pivot from fashion to Israel,
right,
why aren't you like, who's this person? Like, aren't you supposed to be modeling handbags and outfits?
Right.
Like, now we're supposed to take you seriously about the war in the Middle East.
Right.
How did you overcome and say, you know what, I do have a voice here?
First of all, I do suffer from imposter syndrome. I think anyone in a public-facing position that is a self-proclaimed expert suffers with it. I think actually any successful person that I know suffers from imposter syndrome. It's just about faking it. And, you know, I would say that 3 days of the week, I wake up feeling amazing about myself and, you know, feeling super confident. And the other 4, I'm questioning and filled with self-doubt. And
do you have classic trigger? What is my trigger for when I get doubt is when I post something that I didn't. It's like a chess game because you have to figure out how it's going to be received, and it gets received like I didn't anticipate that someone was going to get offended in this way. I've disappointed somebody. How do you remember the first time that you like publicly disappointed somebody on social media?
Actually, yeah, I remember vividly. I had posted a family picture of us in these matching pajamas.
So cute.
Were just whatever. And it was on Christmas Day. They weren't Christmas pajamas, but it was like everyone had the day off, school, whatever.
Yeah.
We were just at my parents' house and I posted this picture. And I started getting attacked by people saying, what are you doing?
This is Christmas.
And I'm like, there are wolves on the pajamas. They were like Roberta Roller Rabbit wolf pajamas. I'm like, what? And I was so hurt that people would make these accusations. Now I would literally laugh and not even give these kinds of comments a second.
It happens.
Yeah, you're just like, wait, you totally misinterpreted my message. I was just posting a cute family photo of us in matching pajamas on. We all happen to be home from work and school. What's the big deal? And they took that as like, oh, you know, you're celebrating Christmas or whatever their interpretation was. But I did want to get back to your initial question about the pivot and wondering if I will be taken seriously.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I am a very multifaceted person. I have always been and I continue to be. I am a very deep thinker. I am an intellectual and an academic, even though I may not look like one and even though I may not always present as one. And I had the confidence. There was never a moment where I doubted my intelligence or my communication skills. I always knew that those were in good shape. If anything, I felt like an imposter in the fashion world because I'm
that's so interesting.
Yeah. I actually felt very much at home when I started advocating full time. That felt completely natural to me. There was never a moment where I felt like, should I be doing this? Who am I to do this? I felt that way actually when I was doing fashion. I had much more imposter syndrome. I felt like I'm doing exactly what God put me here to do when I started doing this work. And I think that's why when people make those comments like they did to you or to me, which I get every day.
You do get those like
every day.
Because God, I'm not here. I didn't come here to.
I don't care because I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it doesn't matter to me what anyone thinks because I know when I put my head on the pillow at night that I spent my day doing everything that I could for the Jewish people and for the state of Israel. And
has it always been like that?
Since I started this work, yes.
Yes. That you feel aligned and
I am on a mission with tunnel vision, completely focused. And I don't care what anyone else thinks.
The part that I find the hardest is specifically in the Jewish world, meaning not just the imposter syndrome vis-a-vis who am I to articulate, you know, I don't know, support for Israel, anti-Semitism, to the, you know, 500,000 followers, 400,000 followers that you have right now. What, to me, the hardest part is actually playing a role within the Jewish community because of the expectations of what, you know, everybody has a model of what a Jewish influencer should look like. And Jewish influencers, even the term influencer is said with like a muted
cringe.
eye roll. Nobody likes that word. And it's hard to take the work that you're not allowed to take yourself seriously as an influencer. The moment you start like, then people are like, oh, she takes herself too seriously.
Yeah.
My question is the imposter syndrome vis-a-vis other Jews and particularly, and I'm so curious about this within the Orthodox community. This is not your community of origin. You began in Fort Worth. You married somebody who made the rounds in the frum world. I thought he was going to find an exit. He's still here, Ira, which is unbelievable and so amazing. But now you're here and you're a real name. I just had a conversation with, I'm going to say who, with Shulem Deen, whom is a former Satmar Chassid. He wrote a beautiful memoir called All Who Go Do Not Return. We were just on the phone talking about something totally separate. And he mentioned in passing, I didn't mention that we were talking. He's like, so funny, he was talking about, his Satmar relatives. And he said, they also watch Lizzy Savetsky. Yep. They're also seeing.
I have a lot of Satmar followers. Yeah. I do.
Because there's this upswelling of interest in Israel. But to me, the moment I heard that, I was like putting myself in your shoes of like the judgment that you could sometimes feel. You get invited by the most important Orthodox institutions, Yeshiva University, the Orthodox Union. How do you contend with feelings of like, now I'm not just a part of the community, I'm one of the spokespeople for the community, and you know that you're not the classical mold.
Yeah.
So how do you contend with those feelings of like, I can speak on behalf of Orthodoxy, but still inside, like every Jew, like I'm not the perfect role model. No. I'm not the best. I'm not like an A+ across the board. So how do you deal with that? Like you must get judgment from other Jews.
I'm not a rabbi, right? So that is, and I will always say that, like if I'm speaking on something or my opinion about something religiously, I'm not here to paskin.
Yeah.
But I believe that.
Who would have thought that later in life you would have to have disclaimers that I am not paskining?
I know, right?
Lizzy from Fort Worth.
I'm not paskining. Not here to paskin. Just here to share my experience. But I think it's a maturity thing for me. I spent so much of my life trying to fit in, and I was so good at it. I could fit in at my country music show in Fort Worth, Texas. I could fit in with the downtown cool kids at NYU. I could fit in Hernof. I could make myself.
Because you learned in Neve. We were just talking about
Neve.
that. Rehova Kablan.
Literally.
In Neve, yeah.
So I was very malleable and able to adapt. And I think with some life challenges that I had, and I would say victories that I had, the biggest success of my life is that I got sober. And I think when I started working a 12-step program and really doing this inventory of myself, I stopped that game that I would play where I would just change whoever I was to fit in with whoever I was with. Mm-hmm. And now I don't want to say I'm cured of any of those things that used to plague me with the people pleasing.
Yeah.
But
there's a crazy book. Can I just tell you this one book?
Yeah.
There's a book that had a huge influence on me because it's basically weaponizing your empathy.
Yeah.
Because you're able to read other people. You can walk into any room, and there's this book called The Drama of the Gifted Child by Alice Miller, and she talks about children who at a young age, and I would consider myself in this category, you undoubtedly were in this category, who learn how to read the room, can end up, their empathy becomes their prison. Because then they walk into every room and they're gauging.
They know how to be.
Exactly.
I know which Lizzy you need me to be.
Exactly.
Yes. So I struggled with that my entire life in every chapter. And it wasn't until I got sober that I really started to understand that about myself. I didn't know that that's who I was.
What was it about the 12-step program that helped you get rid of that demon?
I started to unpack my patterns and see what was driving this self-destructive nature that I had. And I realized that I had spent my entire life seeking external validation, living to please others, and trying to be the best. And I didn't really understand like all the negative things that came with that, meaning like I couldn't just be comfortable being me. And so I would say in the past 3 years, I've really experienced a shift when I walk into a situation like walking into the OU. I'm just Lizzy. I'm unapologetically myself. Like, you invited me here. You know who I am. And I don't have to pretend to be something else.
Was there a time, like pre 3 years ago, if you get invited to the OU or what, like one of these, like,
yeah,
you start to have those like feelings again? Like, am I going to fit in? Am I going to be judged?
Or what? Yeah. How am I going to present myself? What do I need to wear?
Are they going to?
And I had experienced, and I continue to experience from community, a lot of judgment about the way that I dress. And I remember vividly at Neve being in Ramat Beit Shemesh for Sukkot at a rabbi's house. And I went to eat. I was like just freshly in seminary, okay? Not religious, barely Shabbos observant. And I had on a blouse that had like sheer sleeves.
Sure.
Okay? I didn't know. I thought I'm modest. I thought I'm
You
covered.
thought you were like a gold medal winner right now.
No, I just thought I was respectful enough,
Yeah.
you know? And the rabbi said something to me. He was like, it's a chutzpah. And I was so embarrassed.
You're like, that's
crushed. I wanted to leave. I was like, I don't care if I have to break Chag. I want to leave. Like, I didn't. But I was so upset by that feeling. It's like you feel like a small child that's just...
The small child, you're right back of the child who messes up, spills the grape juice.
Totally.
You did something wrong.
So embarrassed. And I still get comments all the time, but now it doesn't affect me in the same way. I don't want to say that it doesn't affect me at all, because of course I'm still human and I'm extremely sensitive. But I feel confident in who I am and the choices that I make. And you don't have to like them. And, you know, if the OU invites me to come to their office, it's because they believe in the work that I'm doing. Even if maybe I'm not ideologically 100% aligned with everything that they're, you know, with everything about their message, they very much are happy that I exist and that I'm doing the work that I do. And so I don't have to come in pretending to be something I'm not, you know?
And you feel that freedom. Do you still, I mean, now, are there still situations where you're getting criticism from within the community? It must be.
I mean, every day online. I mean, I would say.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to change who I am to please others anymore. I did that, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I very much believe that God understands where I am, and he's going to meet me where I am, and I don't need other people's approval, you know?
I want to talk a little bit about your process, about how you post and stay informed about Israel. Mm-hmm. Meaning, it used to be, let's say, 10 years ago, to be an Israel activist, you basically just needed, I don't know, a big Israeli flag. I don't know, Ha'am im HaGolan. I don't know if you remember those posters. Like, you had a good slogan and you show up to the marches.
Right.
And now, especially because of social media, information moves so much faster.
Right.
You need reaction so much quicker.
Right.
And even an influencer, somebody like Lizzy Savetsky's Instagram account, you can't really articulate your opinion without knowing some of the details. You can't like some issues, I guess you can search inside yourself, but like these are real international global issues.
Right.
Where do you turn, Lizzy, to find out like what should my approach to this issue be? How do I stay apprised of what the healthy, appropriate, what the right approach is to any given issue in Israel? It's happening so fast.
Right.
You have so many people who are waiting for you. You can keep it vague, I guess,
Yeah.
but you actually have a lot of videos that are like pretty specific and in the weeds.
Yeah, I get very in the weeds. I think my approach is to always speak as Lizzy Savetsky, not on behalf of the Jewish people or the state of Israel, but to speak as things are affecting me. And I think one of the reasons that I've been able to be successful is because I'm vulnerable. I let my guard down. I show up when I'm angry, when I'm crying. And I think that people see themselves in that and it resonates with them. Because, you know, I am not CNN, even as much as I spend a lot of my time and energy reporting on breaking news. I do it from my own lens. And I think that people tune in specifically to me to see how.
But I want to know how you develop that lens. You, again, I'm gonna be real with you. I know that I am undereducated about Israel.
Right.
I should know more, and it's very clear because
Right.
there are some topics that I'm like deeply overeducated on. I know too much about, and I'm always scared because I don't know what. So sometimes what I do, because on Twitter you don't have to like share your voice. I'll just share a pasuk. I'll just share like a verse in Tehillim and say.
I love that.
That's all I know. That's all I know what to say. Like I don't know if the Hasid good, but like I know how to daven. I know how to pray.
That's beautiful.
Who do you turn to? Do you have books? Do you have like a back end?
You know, so I will tell you that when I made the full pivot in 2021 and basically lost all the jobs that I had, all the brand partnerships, you know, everything, life looked completely different from a career perspective. I decided to take it upon myself to really get educated.
Yeah.
Because I didn't major in Middle Eastern studies or or world religion.
Jewish history. You didn't major in any
none of it. So I didn't go to school for this, and I really felt like I had a lot that I wanted to learn. I'm extremely curious. I love to learn. I would sit with a book all day. That's my happy place.
So that's what I'm asking you. Do you have clear memories of like the books that shaped your vision of Israel?
I mean, I have so many. I mean, one of the first books that I remember falling in love with was Rabbi Riskin wrote a book. It was a collection of stories, and
The Circle in the Square. Is that what it's called?
No.
Okay, keep going. We love Rabbi Riskin. He was my father's NCSY advisor. We wouldn't be a from family.
I don't even remember the name of the book. That's so sad, but it was so foundational for me and my viewpoints because it really helped me understand from an ideological perspective why Israel is critical to the Jews, is intrinsically intertwined with the Jews. Right now, I am very into, maybe I shouldn't say this on here, but I'm extremely into Meir Kahane.
Okay,
very
cool.
into Meir Kahane.
Okay. You have to go through what he was dealing with at that moment. And
honestly, he was right about everything. And it was too radical at the time that he got him killed. But it's like Martin Luther King.
He was also like his personality.
Yeah,
he knew how to press everybody's buttons.
Yes. But I think like I've gone to an extreme now at this point in the war with my viewpoint on what Israel signifies for the Jewish people. And one of the things that I read in Kahane's book a few months ago, it was right before my daughter's bat mitzvah, and her parsha was Lech Lecha. Mm-hmm. And it's so important, and I wish that every Jew could internalize this message, that God said to Avraham, "Come with me to a land that I will show you, where I will make you a great nation," in Lech Lecha. Meaning that Zionism and Judaism were born together in the same breath from God. And so there cannot be one without the other. And I think when I think about my fight for Israel, I'm thinking about it from a Jewish perspective. This to me is not geopolitical. This is Jewish. This is my biblical homeland, the land that God gave me, and the land that, God willing, one day I'll return to. But I think, that's the lens that I'm looking through. And even when I'm reporting on breaking news about what's happening with anti-Semitism in America, or what's happening with the war, what's happening with the hostages, it always comes back to God and Judaism for me.
And that's what I've always been moved by this, because I never looked at your account as being like hasbara or political.
Right.
It's deeply Jewish. And this is a question that I'm so curious to hear specifically your response on, which is, how would you articulate your vision of Judaism in this moment? Meaning, you said you're not a rabbi, but you have a larger platform than any rabbi I know. I don't know a rabbi who has a larger platform. And you talk about Judaism, and you're also coming from a place where you know what it's like to grow up outside of the tri-state area Orthodox infrastructure where we take so much for granted. There's a real awakening happening now, where people who grow up outside of what I'm deliberately calling the Orthodox world And they're trying to imagine from the non-Orthodox world, like what is a realistic vision that my Jewish life could be or become? Because not everybody, and maybe you disagree with me, not everybody's going to be able to fully integrate into the Orthodox community.
Right.
So I'm curious for you, when you're dealing with Jews around the world,
Right.
and you're touching them in a very real place about their religious identity. Do you have like a vision for what you think the common Judaism, or what Jewish life should be, that we should be building post October 7th now?
I started recently. I may cry when I talk about this. I've actually never spoken about this, but I started recently. Every Friday night when I light my Shabbat candles, I say this prayer. I say, God, if there are any Jews out there who were like me, who are craving some sort of connection to you, who are just now waking up to the fact that they're Jewish, but they don't even understand what to do with that or where to go, give them that window of opportunity like you gave me to help them get closer to you. Because I have so much compassion for my fellow Jews around the world who don't have what we have as a strong community, because it is the only thing that has been getting me through this past year and a half, is knowing that I get to go to shul every Shabbos and cry with my community and pray for our hostages in the state of Israel and our soldiers. And I have that because I feel so lonely in my everyday life in this fight. But when I go there, I know that I'm not alone. I know that so many people feel like me. But for Jews out there who are just waking up to what it really means to be Jewish, understanding that they're hated for something that they didn't even choose, something that they were born with, feeling this longing for connection, but really having no knowledge or background. And I want them to get what I had, which is just this moment of grace from God where they're given a chance.
Where you really discover like where you came from. When people reach out to you, and there must be people who do, I'm probably not able to respond to every DM, even between you and Ronit and your
everyone.
assistant, but people reach out to you, and you're probably dealing with like also like celebrities, Jewish celebrities, who are like awakening to something, and you know that a lot of the answer is living within an embodied Jewish community.
Yeah.
It's very hard to create the Jewish experience on your own.
It's very hard.
But what do you tell them? Where do you tell them to start? Like, I'm so curious. Like, people
well,
must be reaching out to you more than any
yeah.
outreach rabbi I've ever met.
It's, for me,
like, where do you say, try this? This is a good starting point.
So here's an example. I got a message from a woman who was dealing with an incredibly anti-Semitic teacher at her child's school, a public school. And there was several Jewish families in the school that were trying to get the school to take it seriously, and they weren't. She writes me, she says, what do I do? So I have to meditate on this for a minute. Took my time, pause, think about it. And then I get back to her and I say, you know what, the best thing that you can do is rally together those Jews and anyone who supports you who's not a Jew, and have a Shabbat dinner and lean into your Jewish identity and feel that closeness and connection. Because the very thing that this person wants to take away from you, don't let her take it away. Lean into it more. Embrace it. That's the victory here. The victory is, of course, like, it would be great to get this teacher fired, but it's even greater to enhance your own identity and to strengthen your own Jewish self. And she wrote me back. She said that they started doing this every month, where they were having these Shabbat dinners, because they didn't even realize that it was something they were missing. And so, like, things like that. Or, I'm not Chabad. Like, I'm not out there trying to get all Jews to light Shabbat candles or keep Shabbos. I mean, I would love for all Jews to do that. I'm not handing out candles on the street corner. But I've seen so many Jewish women bake challah for the first time in their lives this past year, because people are just simply craving a sense of connection to our ancient heritage. And it's something that I think is a real opportunity for people like you and me to capitalize on. I'm very blessed that I have a pretty decent amount of my followers are not observant. And so to them, I am the voice of
You are
Orthodox
the rabbi.
Judaism.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, which is a little scary. But I just want to make it accessible. I don't want it to feel intimidating. Like, to me, it felt very intimidating. And if I don't do everything, then maybe I just shouldn't even do anything.
Are there any parts of the Orthodox community that still bother you?
I don't think it's necessarily isolated to the Orthodox Jewish world. I think it exists in every community. But the thing that really makes me, if you ask me what's something that makes you mad,
Yeah.
it would be seeing Orthodox Jews tear each other down and judge each other, because it's just such a Hillel Hashem, and it's just so unnecessary. And it's always easy to spot the bad and to point out the bad and to have, to speak negatively about each other. But it's harder actually to speak positively and to say, well, maybe I wouldn't do it that way, but maybe she has a reason why she is doing it that way. And I've made it a point that I never publicly criticize the state of Israel, the government, the prime minister. No matter what I may think, I will never publicly criticize. I will also never publicly criticize my fellow Jews unless there's like some real deep exception. Like, for example, right now, Natalie Portman just today for her book club posted some Palestinian author, and I just whatever. Like, I will call up my fellow Jews from time to time, but it
kills
has to
me
really,
because
Hollywood needs. I saw Hollywood burning, maybe you should cut this out, but when I saw the Hollywood sign with the flames,
it was like a metaphor.
I was about to do a video. Like, I mean,
I'm not gonna say it, but there's been a lot of. I definitely have felt disappointment of a lot of the Jewish, celebrity voices that.
But I think at the end of the day, and this goes for everything, the Hollywood Jews, the Orthodox Jews that are judging, like, I try to just keep my expectations very low. Like, I don't, if they disappoint me, it's because I expected them to be better. And so that's my problem, because I'm putting that expectation on them.
I'm curious how you respond, after all this change, after all these transformations that you've been through. And you've built a life for yourself. And it sounds like you've really fashioned a core after going through a 12-step process and really, like, reflecting on yourself. But now you have this life where, like, it's very picturesque. You have a picturesque life. You're married to an accomplished surgeon. You have this incredible platform of your own. How do you respond when people look at you and they still say, like, easy for you to say, you have this charmed life.
I get that every day, by the way.
Easy for you, have this charmed life. And they look at you because they're only interacting you on the surface level.
Yeah.
So they put, does that still hurt, that, like, to be able to fully break through and be seen with the depth and the nuance? You put so much of yourself out there.
Right.
How do you respond that after all of this work, all of these transformations, there must be people who still kind of relate to you on a very surface level.
Right.
And they almost want you to relate to yourself on a surface level.
Yeah.
It's like easy for you to say, look around, there's this charmed life.
Right. I think of it, it's almost funny to me, because it's like I could have just lived a very
charmed life.
Maybe just more simple life. I didn't have to put myself through this, put my family through this. I chose to. It didn't feel like a choice to me. It felt like a real
ambition.
A responsibility.
Yeah.
Obligation. But I know I'm not doing it for the approval. So, like, as much as it stings on the surface when I hear something like that, it was never my motivation for doing this. I'm doing this for my children, for their future, and for the Jewish people. So, there's always going to be naysayers and haters. And I think if people can't see beyond the surface with me now, with the work that I'm doing every day, then they're never going to. And that's really not my problem.
My final question is, you are in this kind of ecosystem where people are sharing Jewish ideas publicly, ideas about Israel. Do you still find that there are some Jewish ideas, Jewish values that need a mic, that need a stronger articulation, that need more people to pick up whatever proverbial microphone you have from the Jewish world. What do you look at this moment is like the idea that for ourselves, not for the outside world, that the Jewish world needs to be embracing and needs to be articulating more clearly in this moment?
I think that we've been so hyper-focused on defending the truth for Israel and on fighting anti-Semitism. And I think that our primary focus needs to be on our own Jewish identity. And I had an interesting conversation with somebody this past week that really was one of those aha moments. And he said that tikkun olam is actually what has hurt us. Because we have this Jewish concept, and I'm talking about every religious Jewish level. It is a Jewish value. Jews are across the board, no matter how religious, even the Jews that identify as atheist, the most philanthropic people in the country, take care of each other, social activists, very concerned with justice. And we have given so much of ourselves to everyone else. And we have really, really neglected our own core and our identity, our connection. And I think anyone can feel this in a certain way. Like, are we just going, even if we are ultra Orthodox, are we just going through the motions, or are we actually connecting? Are our children doing the things that they're doing out of passion and connection and feeling, or because
inertia,
it's the rule, or because that's just their surroundings? I think we need to be doing the things that make us feel Jewish and awakening that passion within us across the board. And as much as it's important to take care of the people in the world around us, we need to focus on ourselves right now, because we are truly in a life or death moment. And we cannot delude ourselves into believing that, turning against our own people to fight for our enemies or fight for the people that have not stood beside us is going to somehow save us, because it never did throughout history. And so this is the time for Jews to focus on Jews. Focus on what makes you feel good about being Jewish, what connects you to our thousands of years of heritage. We have to be so deeply rooted in who we are that no matter what gust of hateful wind blows our way, we will stand firmly. And I think that's really where everyone needs to be focused.
Lizzy Savetsky, just the vision that you have articulated, not just about Israel and even not just about Yiddishkeit, but learning how to take something very intimate, very personal, very private, and project it out to the world. It is really an incredible model of outreach, of being able to take your own experiences, your own upbringing, and share it with vulnerability and honesty to the world. It is so incredibly moving. I always wrap up my interviews with more rapid fire questions.
Perfect.
Always love books. I'm curious, is there a seminal book on Jewish practice, Jewish thought that played a big influence in your life? I know you already mentioned Rabbi Riskin. That is like a message of Judaism that you love to project outwards.
The rebbetzin Young Rice. She's one of my absolute heroes, and I'm close with her daughter, but I never got to meet her. And
I love that. And I mean this seriously. You have a little bit Rebbetzin Young Rice energy.
It's not the first time I've heard that.
That,
I'm very honored.
Truly, because
thank you.
When she was at her peak in Hineni, I mean,
she was
fierce, and she didn't have the social media. And you try to wonder what she would be like. I didn't know her when she was in her 20s and 30s.
Yep, she's an absolute hero of mine, and I love the book. The Rebbetzin is really a compilation of so many of her writings, and so it's a really good one.
Rebbetzin Young Rice. I love that you brought her back for our listeners. What a great name. My next question: if somebody gave you a great deal of money and allowed you to take a sabbatical with no responsibilities whatsoever, you have to go back to school and get a PhD, What do you think the subject and title of your dissertation would be?
It's so interesting because I'm so curious about so many things. My interests go from like science and space to
I mean, jazz.
to music,
performing arts, Israel,
I
politics,
guess it would
Judaism.
have to be some sort of like a interdisciplinary dissertation. And
Gallatin.
I was in Gallatin.
Exactly. It doesn't surprise me.
So I was in Gallatin. I'm very into the interdisciplinary. My favorite thing to do is to tie all of my interests together.
Yeah.
And with some, beautiful poetic.
So what do you think you'd study?
I would study the universe. I would study. I'm deeply fascinated by our solar system and
really,
other
like
solar
science, like that,
very
like
deeply
astrophysics,
fascinated by
that
it.
kind of stuff.
One of my favorite books is Genesis and the Big Bang.
Ooh, Gerald Schroeder.
Love him. Got to take classes from him at Aish. He's
Sure,
incredible.
Sure.
I'm sorry, this is not very good at rapid fire, but
No,
I'm
this
so
is great.
deeply. If I had more time and
I like because you always surprise our listeners. I think if they were to guess, be like, "What is the book? What is Lizzy going to study?" And that imagine
Physics.
sabbatical. Astrophysics.
Astrophysics.
Yeah. I love it. My final
That
answer.
would be my.
I'm always curious about people's sleep schedules. What time do you go to sleep at night, and what time do you wake up in the morning?
I'm always up at 6 because actually that's a lie. Today I was up at 8, but I never do that. I sleep.
Okay.
I'm up at 6 every morning.
8. You slept in. If you
I
woke
slept in. I'm up at 6 every day. At Shabbos, sometimes I'll sleep till 7, but
For real? Oh, you're like legit. You wake up early.
I wake up early. I'm an early
Shabbos
riser.
morning.
I get
up.
all of my good work done in the morning. At
Okay.
night, I'm a waste. I'm
Okay.
a waste. I can't. Bedtime is variable. It depends how tired I am. I try to go to bed before midnight, but it doesn't always happen.
Lizzy Savetsky, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.